I've always been a dreamer, but this farm did something to that capacity. There's a heart sickness that comes when you want something so bad that you cannot possibly make happen on your own. And I had become comfortably heartsick. And this farm cured me of that. It made me comfortable with chickens in my yard. It made me comfortable with the awe of the garden growing. It made me expectant for romance every single day that I walk out my door.
Oh, hold it up, let me see that. That's a lot.
This farm enabled me to dream bravely.
So if this is the dream, and it's everything that you ever could have imagined, why in the world would you leave?
Well, that's the nature of dreams, is when you harvest them, they're full of seeds. Seeds bring multiplication. Right now there is this overwhelming excitement, and it just really does feel like we have a world of possibility in front of us. It's all big dreams. It's all what could go right. Of course, we're moving during a really tumultuous time. I don't think there's ever been a time quite so inconvenient to move across the country. My name is Jessica Sowards, and I run Roots and Refuge Farm with my husband Maya. I grow food and raise my family doing so, and teach other people how to do it. I'm really excited to see all those sunflowers, big, tall, and blooming. It's gonna be really beautiful. Here are some dried pole beans. You can see them. But now they consistently lay large brown eggs every single day. I met Jeremiah's family before I met him. It was a very weird thing. For years prior to us meeting, we missed each other so many times.
And it seemed like every time that I would come into town, from wherever I was living, we never met for a few years. I think it was a New Year's Eve party was the first time we ever actually saw each other. And then a month or so later, we were going to the same church and realized that we had the same age kids. We started going on like play dates and stuff, like with the group, and we went to the zoo, and from that a friendship started and accelerated into a romantic relationship.
So I have this really distinct memory of being on a date night with Jeremiah. We were in a bookstore. We were like dumb broke. We were the kind of broke that we were at the bookstore reading the books, but we were not gonna buy them. Like, that was the setting for this instance. And I had a homesteading book open, and I remember this little drawing of a hog and all the different cuts. And I was crying. Like, I just started crying, like alligator tears dropping on this book. And I literally thought, oh, stop crying on this book, you can't afford to buy it. It was not a romantic book. It was about backyard homesteading. There was nothing about it, didn't have beautiful pictures. But this desire in my heart was so immense, and it felt so impossible. That moment was my moment of surrender, where I surrendered the impossibility of that dream and the intensity of it. When we found this place, it was a foreclosure, and it was a mess. I mean, most people would have looked at this house and this property and went, ugh. And somehow we saw chicken coops and gardens, and we rolled up our sleeves and we just dove into it. I've never experienced more of a classroom than this farm. I call it my classroom all the time. It has been such an incredible classroom. It has made me realize that I am walking through my life with a brilliant and patient teacher. And everything speaks a lesson when you're a student. When you just decide to be a student in your life, you are surrounded by the opportunity to learn.
When we first got to the property and really felt called to turn this small acreage into something that produces food,
we jumped in extremely hastily. We were like, oh no, the food system is so broken. We gotta grow our food, we gotta do it fast.
my wife brought home chickens before we had a single fence. We had no barns, no buildings. We literally had really no infrastructure at all to support any animal, and we had chickens.
This is one of those stories that it's like at some point it's going to become a redemptive story, but it still stings a little. We went into debt, which we knew not to do, and we had financed this little building that we turned into a chicken coop.
She's like, you know what, if this is what you want to do, we can do it. She pretty much thought it was a bad idea, but I decided to go ahead and do it.
I was sitting at my window one day, playing my piano, worshiping, and a big old truck backs into my driveway, and they repossessed my chicken coop. They threw the chickens out into the yard. They wanted $1,000 that day for us to keep the coop. We were almost completely done paying for it. We had $1,000. That's all we had. And that $1,000 we had earmarked to finish building our garden. I was sitting on my back porch one day and I was feeling extraordinarily hopeless. I was thinking, have I just completely missed it on this whole farm thing? Because we're drowning here. I have no idea what to do. I'd made a handful of videos, picked it back up, made a handful, quit again. I was writing in my journal and it was just all of a sudden this, I guess you could call it, vision, whatever you want to go with. I went to Jeremiah, marched over to him in resolute determination, and I said, hey,
I'm gonna do a YouTube channel like it's my job, and I'm really gonna pursue it, and I really feel like it's going to fund the farm the way that we've envisioned it. I didn't really understand what that meant, but I knew that she would be successful at it, whatever that looked like.
Now mind you, I had, at this point, I think I'd accrued 1,000 subscribers over the 2.5 years that I had 14 videos on YouTube. And Jeremiah knows me well enough to know there was no argument at that point. The only thing that could be said was, okay, you do that. And I did. And for months, nobody watched them. It was real slow going. I was working hard, learning the ropes of editing and uploading and self-discipline because you don't have a boss. But I was like, I'm doing this like it's my job. And I did my first garden tour a few months after that. Good morning, YouTube. Come take a walk with me. Bit of an experiment for us. And I've actually since been reading about some different growing practices that I'm going to be implementing before next year. We're going to do. Here we have a watermelon, and then these are a couple of different. Do you know we built our garden with that $1,000, and the first video that I ever had on YouTube that took off was my first garden tour. And the decision to let that chicken coop go and build the garden instead was the first decision that we made, not out of fear, but out of this blind faith of no, this is what we're supposed to do. And by the end of that year, our channel was sitting at about 40,000 subscribers. And now, 3.5 years later, we're closing in on about 500,000. So it really was a matter of just doing it faithfully and honestly, and yeah, I did it like it was my job.
She's usually got a list of videos, ideas of either vlogs or educational stuff, and then she'll figure out which one fits with the weather. And that kind of dictates what video is going to get shot when, and then she'll go out and she'll shoot a great video.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Roots and Refuge Farm. My name is Jess.
Jessica tries to keep an even balance of educational stuff, so just straight teaching. Okay, here's how you do this thing, like pruning tomatoes, or here's how you space out planting. And then also a vlog style. So it just kind of gives like the human interest side of what we're doing, like our kids and
in South Carolina.
what is our life like.
Is staying here. My friend Jill is going to be.
It usually starts with feed and then checking on everything. You know, the chickens, the ducks, the turkeys, the pigs. You know, we have feeder pigs, we have breeder pigs. They each get fed something different. We gather eggs. And usually after all the animals are fed, they've all been checked on. We check on water, we check on bedding. At that point, usually we will start looking at gardens.
All right, what do you guys want to grab up here? You want to get the tomatillo? I've always really loved beautiful things, and for a long time, that was something I was actually really embarrassed about. I thought being poetic in nature and being like wooed by beauty was something silly, like a silly little girl thing. But somewhere along the way, I learned that that's actually just part of the tapestry of who I am, and that it is created for a purpose, and it's worthy of being acknowledged and given space to roam. And for me, this was the most romantic thing I could think about. I mean, dirt and mud and poop and all, the farm life woos me every single day. From the sound of the wild geese on the pond across the street, to the way that the air feels when the sun rises, to the color of eggshells in their shades of blue and green and brown, to the sounds of crickets and even the hogs screaming for their breakfast, to the feel of a goat's fur underneath my hands and the faithfulness of my dog. It is unreal the amount of romance that exists in a place like this. It just all felt like a massive dream come true. Seven years ago, I could never have fathomed teaching people all over the world how to garden, sharing the hope of healthy family and the hope of fulfilled dreams. I was so heartsick that I was being brave to dream of chickens in my yard. But now I think, well, what else could be possible? What if I took the fulfillment of my dream and split it open and gathered out all those seeds and I sowed them in other people?
Hey guys, welcome to Roots and Refuge Farm.
And I remember being in my garden one afternoon in July, and I just had this idea of a restaurant, a farm-to-table restaurant. And I thought, oh, that would be really cool. And I just started to daydream on it. I just started to kind of imagine this restaurant. And I thought, maybe I could do that one day. And after more of those thoughts started to come, I imagined this big old glass greenhouse and like selling plants, and imagine a coffee shop and selling roasted coffee, and these little things just started to kind of come up. And the first, I don't know, few months of having these ideas, of realizing you've got more possibilities. Like, this doesn't have to be it for you. This doesn't have to be the greatest accomplishment you have. I was like swatting these ideas down like flies. I'm like, I don't need all that. I've got enough. I've got enough. I've got enough. Maya and I went on a trip out to South Carolina, and we were there, and we just had this discussion of like, let's do something big. Let's take this thing, let's lay it on the table, and let's see where we could take it. We started developing curriculums. We started to imagine having a school and reforming the culture and reviving a town. We started to imagine all of these things. And at first it felt really, really outlandish, but we just kept writing them down. And we started to just imagine having reach. During the period of 2020, I mean, people saw empty grocery store shelves, and what did they do? They ran to YouTube and said, how do you grow food? And there we were, making videos, as we had been for the last couple of years. And so we experienced this explosion in resources and capacity, and now we have these crazy big dreams, and they don't feel impossible. I have this big dream, this big vision, I guess you could call it, of a learning center, this massive long table and a commercial kitchen, this big glass greenhouse, and people coming from all over the world to sit down at that table and to learn how to grow food, to learn how to empower their communities, to learn how to see their dreams fulfilled, and to then sow the seeds of them into other people. I want to take what we have accomplished and what we have seen fulfilled in our lives, and I want to empower other people to have the same. At this point, I can't stay here because I've got this big thing, and I know I could do it. And I know how many people could benefit from it. So staying here, while I could say, well, we'd be fine, we could be just great, I think that I would be just completely dissatisfied because I know what else we could do. So we have 32 days until all our stuff leaves. And essentially what we are doing for the next 32 days is Maya's spending most of that in South Carolina. He's gonna be out there making sure we have the utilities we need and the fences we need to move our animals that we're taking. And I'll be here getting our house ready to move. So we have to move our whole house worth of stuff with all our kids. And then we have all of the animals, and we have what structures we're taking, like our chicken coop and some of the materials we have that right now, because materials are so expensive, it makes sense for us to take them.
I think moving from Arkansas to South Carolina would be difficult and a lot to do just by itself. I think moving a farm while doing a YouTube channel that far is even more. And so it's been a lot of logistics. Like if we were going to a place that had a house and even had some farm infrastructure on it already, that would be one thing, but this is a raw piece of land, so we have really no functioning fences, no really functioning barns for what we need. There was no water, no electricity. That added a whole nother level of stuff that we had to start working out to be able to transition the farm.
So we're looking at several 700-mile one-way trips to be able to take everything. There's gonna be a lot of driving involved, and there's gonna be a lot of time apart, which is really unusual for us. We actually haven't spent just a ton of time apart in our marriage. I don't wanna say this is hard or bad because we're choosing it. I think it's worth it, but I'm extremely uncomfortable. This is the most uncomfortable season that I can remember having lived through voluntarily.
It's hard. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I have cried so many times over the last few months. I have stood at my back porch and looked out on my farm in the morning. It's my favorite. For so long, I stood there and thought, thank you, Lord, for giving this to me. And now I'm saying, thank you, Lord, for giving me the opportunity to lay it back down. I wouldn't be satisfied to stay because I know what else we can do. But I don't want to leave. And we're leaving in the middle of the most beautiful time of the garden in full bloom. And that has been my sanctuary, that has been my safe place, that has been genuinely, I found myself in that little 10,000 square foot piece of earth. I learned who I was there. And because of that, I get to move on knowing who I am. But closing the door on that and moving on, that's not easy. It's costly. This is costly, but worthy. And most worthy things, they are costly. Everything that I'm hoping for and all the change that we're hoping to affect in the world is possible because this little season on this little piece of ground that 7 years ago didn't look promising at all. This farm has been the greatest classroom I've ever known. It has formed us as a family. It has grown us. My marriage became what it is today on this farm. My children have become who they are today on this farm. And I am who I am because of this farm. And yes, we are going to close that garden gate. And I'm not going to walk through it anymore. I'm not going to put seeds in the ground here anymore. I'll always have roots here. Anything that ever grows in my life will have roots on this little farm in the middle of nowhere in Arkansas. So I don't think I'll ever stop saying thank you to the original Roots and Refuge farm. It's the weirdest thing. I want to go home. I can't even explain that, but I really want to go home.